This cat got in the room. I don't want any more health up. I want this to be soul hurt filled. It's better with Horror Babylon. So I'll take the candle. Red candle looks good. I like it better than Krampus head. You can use it in every room. Yeah, I have a lot of red hearts. Be nice to lose some of those. I'm gonna have shit ton of bombs now. Got him. Yeah. Ah.
I'm back.
You're back.
Thank you. Cat.
That sounds a little upset.
No, she's happy. She likes people. Now I'm back. She's like, yay, person.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I just feel like censorship in general is kind of stupid. Like, if you
It
don't
just
like
seems so
something,
arbitrary a lot of the times.
yeah, if you don't like something, don't buy it. It's like not allowing something to be made just seems to be silly, because then nobody gets to enjoy that thing. Not even the people that are okay with it, and that just seems a little silly. I mean, there are cases where censorship makes sense. I'll at least say that, but I find most of the time it's usually arbitrary and completely pointless. There can be some cases where it's very gray line, because, for example, in Pokemon, Jinx used to be black. They changed her to purple because of the stereotype on black people from like the 80s and whatnot, where you had blackface, and it was, you know, popular at that time to depict black people as having big red lips and completely black skin. And that's no longer okay in this day and age.
It wasn't Jinx based off of like something entirely different anyway.
Yeah, but you could at least understand the connotation that people were making. Like, it could be construed to look like that, but it was based off of a Japanese folklore about an ice woman who was in the mountains, and I think she would take people's souls or something like that, using a melody to lure people in, which is why Jinx has the ability to sing. It's a reference to that, not blackface. But if someone who didn't know about the Japanese folklore saw the original design of Jinx, they might assume that it was instead a reference to blackface, just because it looks somewhat similar to how blackface was portrayed.
I suppose that at least makes some sense.
Yeah, that's more understandable to me than censoring something like the color of blood.
That's it. Do I even have any guppy pieces? That's unfortunate.
But I kind of don't like it when games feel like they're not allowed to be foreign, because that's how like some series come across. Like Ace Attorney, it's set in Japan in the Japanese localization, but in the American localization they changed it to New York and removed pretty much every reference to anything Japanese and replaced it with something American so that it would be more culturally well known, at least for the most part.
That makes sense though. People could relate with it better in that case.
But in some instances it was a little ridiculous, because they would be like
something that was like very obviously not American.
In some cases it just didn't make any sense to change it. Like, there's characters like in Japan, ramen is a very common food, but in America it's less common. It's usually just, you know, microwavable kind. You don't really have ramen shops, so yeah, you would have instances where ramen bowls were replaced with like hamburgers, and you'd have sushi replaced with hamburgers. It's like it's
everything's hamburgers here in America.
Yep. It's just stupid to me, because like I can get changing some cultural things, but changing food seems to be silly to me.
Well, food is cultural.
Well, that's true, but like people generally know what sushi is.
But yeah,
though.
I think people would understand what it is. Yeah.
I could understand changing cultural things that people won't understand. Like, a lot of the Japanese names of Ace Attorney characters are puns, just like the American ones, but they're harder for Americans to understand because they're references to, like, Japanese kanji or something like that. Something with Japanese significance. So changing that makes sense, but it makes no sense to me to change stuff like sushi and ramen, because, like, Americans generally know what sushi and ramen are. I mean, obviously you're not gonna have a Japanese game localized to English with no changes, because it would be very confusing otherwise. Because a lot of things in Japanese culture just wouldn't make any sense to an American, because of course the culture is very different. So, at least to some extent, you do have to localize it, but certain things don't make any sense to be changed. I mean, there are even, like, Chinese and Japanese and Korean restaurants in America, so people generally know what Asian foods are. I'm gonna look up localization changes for Ace Attorney and see if I can find anything that would be really silly.
Wow, that blood beam guy really helped.
Specifically, the American localization of the Ace Attorney series is based in California. In one of the Ace Attorney games, there's actually a very Japanese town that would have been impossible to localize properly by making everything there American. It would have to have become a very different area entirely and would have changed that entire case, because that entire case was based around Japanese folklore. It was about a fox spirit and I think crow spirit or something like that. So if they changed that, it would have become a completely different area. So instead of changing entirely, what they did instead was explain that, like, that place was inhabited by Japanese immigrants. So that's why they built a Japanese society in California. It's like, oh, they're immigrants.
Or are we the immigrants? I do want that, however, I would prefer it if I could find a way to get rid of this